We've always done it that way. I have the experience. I know how things go. Have you heard these phrases? Based on a huge amount of emails, I now have to pick up this topic. Often you see people saying, I have the knowledge, I have the experience, and no question, knowledge and experience is great and extremely helpful. However, we have to know how to channel it properly, how to deal with it. And that's why today we're going to talk about the half-life of knowledge and experience. When we talk about the half-life of knowledge and experience, it's very obvious this is a massive reason of concern in many organizations because often people say, look, I really don't like to work with that colleague. He always wants to have it his way. He always says, I know how it goes. He's not open for change. He will simply do it the way he always did it, and he simply doesn't want to change in any way. So we need to know how to do this better. First, of course, we have to talk about this situation, which we are. When we talk about half-life, people from physics and chemistry probably know what that is. Half-life, and I'm now not getting into the physical chemical aspect of this here. Half-life basically means either the amount of knowledge doubled or your knowledge is worth half of what it was before. When you, for example, work in the tech industry, then the half-life usually is 12 to 18 months and it's shortening by the minute. That means when you stay the same, your knowledge and your experience will be worth less because you didn't keep up with the pace of developments in your industry. And of course, we have two aspects of that, knowledge and experience. Knowledge is something you can read somewhere. Knowledge is something which can be acquired by, for example, formal education, professional education, executive education, university, vocational training, certificates, etc., etc. That is knowledge. The experience is what you get when you actually do the job. And here's the important use, you need both. When you only have the knowledge, you're an expert. However, you don't know how to put things in practice. I give you a very simple reason. When you ever heard of how to implement a software and you've never worked with users who probably do not have the affinity to tech as you have it, you can implement the software in theory as often as you like. As soon as you meet the real world, you will see that acceptance of software is a whole different ballgame. And that's where the experience comes in. Experience means you know not only how to have the knowledge, but also how to apply the knowledge, especially with the human factor, with development, with everything that external in an either complicated or even complex world, you know how to apply this properly in any situation. The question now is, why do we actually still face this situation with half-life of knowledge? What is the reasoning for that? And the reasoning for that has different aspects. So first, there is a very different perception of time. Let's say you work in the shipping industry or logistics, and you work in this industry for 30 years. You probably remember when you got into the industry and you learned lots and lots and lots of new stuff every single day. And then it somehow settled. And you thought, yeah, I think I know the most important aspect. And I actually know, I think it's going pretty well. I think I can handle it from here. So you suddenly think that what you know is timeless and what you do is timeless. And then you see change is happening. And here we come to a massive, massive issue. Way too often when we talk about change, especially the leaders who tell their people, hey, change is always an opportunity, always see the positive side of change, all of that is suddenly not applied by the leaders themselves. When you see that people say change is an opportunity, just remember when they talked about diversity back in the days. Suddenly, science found out diversity is beneficial for your organization. And then you suddenly didn't see boards changing. Executive boards remained the same. They say, oh, yeah, we do the diversity bits, somewhere on the operational level, somewhere there. But, on the executive level, we just keep hiring the same people from the same business clubs, right? We don't want to change that. They love to talk about change. They love others to change for them, for their favor, in their favor, but they do not change by themselves. And that's where the massive issue begins. People suddenly think, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, so I know it all. And you simply have to step away from that aspect because society changes every single day. I give you a very simple aspect. Let's say 25 years ago, beginning 2000s, or even in the 1990s, someone asked you about remote work. And of course, I know what's coming now. People say, well, back in the days, it wasn't possible because we didn't have the internet, right? Okay, look here, the news. When we look into the development of the internet, from DSL onward, as soon as we had DS, I mean, with ISDN, I agree it was limited opportunities with remote work. But as soon as we had DSL lines, 1 or 2 Mbit back in the days, not even 1 Mbit, that was where you could do easy meetings. That's where Skype also began. That's where you could meet. However, companies simply said, no, no, you show up in the office every single day. Why? Because we always did it that way. Society by the way, doesn't change the same way in every single country. Because some people might now say, wait, we adapted remote work way quicker. And when you say that, you probably work either in the UK or in the US or in Canada. Countries which adapted to remote work way quicker because A, they are way larger, or B, they saw the opportunity. Especially in the UK, where they said, we can't make people move to London anymore. It's getting more and more expensive. And by the way, it kept going ever since in that direction. These people then said, look, when we hire people from Scotland, they can work in Scotland, live in Scotland, and we can make them work for us in London without relocating. So they had the need for it. Society changes at different speeds. When you, for example, work in the German-speaking area, especially in Germany, remote work basically didn't happen before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, it was only there because now it was undeniably available and employers couldn't pretend that they can't do it. So very important is society changes and so do you, at least if you want to keep up the pace. So don't think anything you know is timeless. Don't think change goes past you. And don't think that societal changes can be ignored by you. Because as soon as you ignore one of these three, you will become the colleague where people say, I'd rather not work with you because it's all a bit outdated and you're pretty stubborn, to be fair. So maybe just not you. The question now is, how can we do better? The implementation of that. As soon as we talk about implementation, the first thing is get awareness in. Get the awareness in that people actually know. And this is not about replaceability. It's not about telling people you're replaceable. It's about telling people everything we do, everything we know needs an update from one day to the other. And the leading way is always by science. You need to tick the science bit. And this can be vocational training, certificates, ongoing training, any kind of education brings you forward. If you think that your experience, your n equals one, your personal actions suddenly are facts, that is how nothing works. And by the way, I do not exclude my own industry here. When you see the amount of trainers, speakers, coaches, when you look on their LinkedIn profile, their last bit of updated education often is 20 years old. Do not get these people in your organization. They are not credible. They tell you outdated stuff. They tell you stuff that they read on internet blogs and they say, oh, that's a catchy idea, so I'm going to pick that one up. The science bit needs to be done. I am undergoing ongoing education for one reason. I want my clients to receive the best knowledge they can ever get at every point in time possible. So be aware that this science aspect needs to be the leading aspect, in addition to, of course, ongoing education. When you, for example, just a simple example here, AI, as soon as you talk about AI, you can't just tell people, well, let's go home and just at home you could try Copilot or something. Yeah, and then you know how it goes. No, they don't. Because not every person has the same affinity to tech or progress or development. And some people simply with their families, children, whatnot, simply have other things to do than doing their ongoing education outside of working hours. Professional education is an obligation for any modern organization. Bringing people forward, developing them properly, science backed, by the way, which means someone needs the experience, the science backing, and also the person delivering the education should be reasonably entertaining because otherwise it gets boring really quickly. So it's important that the education is offered. It's also a massive reason for people to stay in your organization because they say, hey, my skill doesn't get outdated here. And that's why people love to stay. So be sure that you deliver on that promise as well. Because when you deliver on the promises that we just discussed about, and you do it the way that we talked about here right now, then you will not have the issue with half-life of knowledge and experience. Then you will have a thriving organization where every single person works together. And I wish you all the best implementing this in your organization. And when you now say, I think I have 2 or 28 questions about that, very happy to discuss that. Feel free to contact me anytime. First, of course, when you now watch me on YouTube, feel free to leave a like there. Thank you very much for doing so. Feel free, of course, to subscribe to my channel as well. And comment here. I'm always looking for discussions. And of course, when you now listen to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you very much for leaving 5 stars. Thank you very much for doing so. And any kind of recommendation, online or offline, social media, and your friends, colleagues, anywhere, recommend this channel, podcast, videocast, anywhere you like. It's going really well. Thank you very much. We had great ratings again, so the podcast is going very well. So thank you very much for your ongoing support. Of course, in addition to that, we know you know that we put lots of effort in here, and we offer all of that for free. We keep going at least one leadership tip every single day online, only available via the YouTube Shorts. So it really pays off to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Not only subscribe, but also put a little bell in there because then you always get a bit of an update as soon as something new pops up. You roughly get 1 or 2 leadership tips each day, either from me or from an external person that we actually had on the podcast. And of course, coming to podcasts, you can also follow me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also go on my website. When you say, hey, we need someone, a trainer, speaker, coach, mentor, consultant, or a project interim manager on the matter, feel free to get in touch. By the way, you can also get in touch if you just like to have a chat. nb@nb-networks.com. I'm always looking forward to hearing from you. So feel free to contact me via email at any time. And of course, if you like to have live sessions, we have live sessions. Go to expert.nb-networks.com, sign up there, and no worries, you only receive one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. And by the way, only there you get full access to all the podcasts, all the video casts in the English and German language. And most importantly, you get the date, the time, and the access link for the live session, which is only available via the leadership letter. There is no other channel of communications where we publish that date. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And of course, on top of all of that, very important as well. Connect with me on social media. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Do the proper connect, don't do the follow thing. Do a proper connect. I'm looking forward to being connected with you. Follow me on Instagram if you like. You can also like me on Facebook and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. The most important thing, however, is always the last bit that I say, which is apply, apply, apply what you heard. Because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive aspects that you obviously want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. And at the end of this podcast, as well as at the end of this video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.